to the Submerged Podcast. I'm Camila, and this is my dad, Benji. This is episode 15, and if you have not checked us out before, we are on Spotify at Submerged Podcast.
Yes, welcome Camila. We took a little break. Everybody deserves that. It's the summer, so we thought we would come back. And yeah, school started here, so I know a lot of people are still in the throes of the dog days of summer, as they call it in August.
Yes.
And we thought we'd come back with something a little lighter, called Summer Book Reviews, and some odd animal news for people who don't know us. We like to bring up some odd news, but I think today I wanted to keep it light, but at the same time also present maybe two completely different books. Camila is going to try to convince maybe my generation why I should be maybe paying attention to the book she read in the series, and then I'll talk about the book that I read and why I think the youth should be paying attention and others. So, but maybe before we start, Camila, important, we are keeping a vigilant eye on the area around the house. We have not seen the cranes in about a week and a half. If you remember in episode 8, we talked about how when the baby cranes, maybe 9 months to 12 months, as they grow very fast, as you expressed, Camila, at one point they break away from the parents and they go to find their own mates and other babies in the area. So we haven't seen them. I'll reserve my tears for later because I do miss them. Abuela doesn't miss them because those little bastards have been going after the onions and the garden. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, we'll keep an eye on them, and hopefully wherever they are, bless them, they're doing well. So then, Camila, go ahead. Let's talk about your book. Introduce your book to people and far away.
Okay. So, over the summer, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses. My mom actually read this before me. It's part of a series, the trilogy. There is a novella, and there is a 5th book, but it's written from a different perspective of other characters that you meet within the series. But it's called A Court of Thorns and Roses. Oh my God, words. And it's written by Sarah J. Maas. At first, I was a little skeptical about this book because it is fantasy. Like, the genre talks about fairies, talks about a lot of different creatures. And usually I find myself reading books about mystery and crime, and I'm usually more attracted to those type of books. But I do love a good fantasy book. And this is a romance. So
is it a Lord of the Rings with romance? Is that what you're saying?
I've never read Lord of the Rings, so I don't know.
Which is fantasy. About. So you have to believe in this world in order for the romance to work, or you just go with it. Like Harry Potter's fantasy. Yeah. But you have to buy into this universe.
You have to get into it because it gets really complicated as the books go on. But it's definitely an interesting fantasy to read. But it's about a girl. She's 19. She is a human. There is a separation in these two worlds. There's the human realms, and then there's the fairy realms, and that's where you find all these little creatures and whatnot. But the main character, her name is Farah. She's 19. She's a huntress. She lives in a village with her dad and her 2 sisters. They are flat out broke. So Farah every day has to go out to the woods and kill and try to bring something back home to be able to feed her family. And she's been doing it since she was 14. So it's written in her perspective the entire book. We don't get any other perspective throughout the entire series, which is debated as to whether or not it's like it gets tiring or not, but that's for later.
So right off the bat, we like Farah, right? So we're rooting for her.
We feel bad for her.
Right. Okay.
And so she lives in this village, and there's one day where she goes out and she has this encounter with this wolf, and it's like it's not a normal wolf, but like she can't put a pin on what's wrong with the wolf, but she kills the wolf with hatred in her heart, and she kills it and brings it home and sells it and does whatever she pleases with it. That night, a creature from these fairy realms comes and steals her away and takes her to the fairy realms where she has to repay a debt. And
the wolf was much more than just a scary animal for folks. It was the key to.
Yes, so she has to go to these fairy realms and she has to pay a debt. obviously I don't want to like go.
Where's the romance? I thought it was going to be Dirty
hold
Dancing
on,
with
hold
wolves.
on.
I thought when she met the wolves, she'd start
I don't want to.
Patrick Swayze in his ass.
I don't want to spoil too much of the book, because if I spoil too much, then it'll get really complicated and I'll confuse and I'll have to explain like everything that goes on in the book. But the creature that kidnaps her ends up revealing himself as an immortal fairy, and he is one of the High Lords of one of the 7 courts in these fairy realms.
Here we go.
So it's written in a very Beauty and the Beast way, so it might appeal to obviously my generation because it's romance and it's this fairy guy who kidnaps her and he brings her to his castle. So it appealed to me.
I want to make a joke, but I'm not going to. Is he a very soft type guy? Is he a
well, you have to
domineering?
find that out for yourself.
Is he an alpha fairy?
You have to find that out. They all are.
They
but
all
you need
are.
to find that out for
fairies.
yourself. You need to find that out for yourself. You need to read the book. So yes, so she's in these fairy lands. So obviously, from the sound of it, for your generation, you'd be like, what? Because it's romance. She's 19. It's not very adult, type of book. It obviously goes way more with my generation, but surprisingly, there are a lot of like women, like mom's age or in their 30s that have read this book. And once I joined the fandom and I saw like all these people talking about the book.
What's the fandom?
Like Facebook groups, Instagram groups. I've joined all of them.
So this has already got a cult following.
Yes.
Okay.
This book was published in like 2015.
Ah.
So this book has been around for a while. So the fandom has become a thing. So it's
there's
a lot of middle-aged women actually reading these books.
Was there a monkey in there? Did he have pox? Monkey pox?
Shut
up. No.
So yeah, there's a lot
wolf
of
pox.
No, bruh. So there's a lot of women that are middle-aged reading these books, which actually surprised me because I was like, you'd think that teenagers would be reading this book about romance and fairies and all these things.
It's fine. You stated it. Why are women in their 30s and 40s paying attention to this book?
It is this unrealistic romance and these unrealistically hot characters that are like in this book.
So you're saying women have unrealistic dreams? Is that what you're saying?
So I think some of these middle-aged women, as sad as it is, they're taking their sadness out and they're in their 40s and their lack of romance out on these books. That's from reading it and from analyzing, I think that's what the conclusion I've come to. They're lacking that in their life, so they read about it.
I don't think also it's a question of lacking. I think you're being a bit harsh. You tend to be harsh with your criticism.
Okay, well,
you need to be a little more balanced. Is that everybody likes escapism, men or women, and you're always whether it's on the romantic side, whether it's even on the violent side with video games, or I think people like to feel like there's somebody else, and they like to feel they're being transported. And it looks like this girl was transported after killing a wolf to an alpha fairy realm.
It's a lot more
and
complicated.
I know, but I'm just saying that it's not just about lack. It's also about tapping in. It's tapped into something where there's primal feelings, and that always is going to appeal to human beings, whether male or female.
Right. The romance part is more appealing to the women, but there is like a gory aspect to this book and a very war and fighting aspect to this book that I didn't really know that was going to be brought into it. And I hate movies that have like violence and stuff, and like gore. I've never been that type of person, but like reading these books, I'm like, oh, this is good. Like the fighting scenes are good and there's gore. So I feel like that's what kind of appeals to a more male audience. I've seen a lot of these women in these fandoms or whatever. They make their husbands read the book and they absolutely love it.
Okay.
But they focus more on the fighting aspects,
right?
Because it's obviously swords and fighting and all those types of things.
Well, that's why I see Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings, as I said, has the fairy aspect, has the Hobbit aspect, but then also there is very heavy underlying themes, a la Star Wars, of good versus evil, darkness versus light.
So,
and then everybody wants to believe there's a parallel universe, whether it's fairy or whether it's you and me sitting in the same chair with Abuelo filming us, but maybe Abuelo's 50, I'm 19, and you're my 10-year-old daughter. It was a miracle of science. Right. So I'm just saying, people have been playing on that a lot, right?
Yes. So men are more focused on the fighting, whereas women are more focused on the romance. But together, they did a really good job of not making it too romancy and like leaving out some of the fighting. I think it was a really good mix, and I really enjoyed the book. And this fandom has grown so large, which is so exciting. They're making a show out of it.
Oh Jesus, what a surprise.
But hold on. Hulu's making a show out of it, and it's the creator of Outlander. So for those who haven't seen Outlander, my mom watches it a bunch. You've seen several episodes, right? I've seen several episodes of Outlander. The costumes are great. The acting is great. It's a good show.
No, it's well produced. It's well produced.
I'm very excited to see what they come up with. I might be like biased because I've already read all the books, and like you guys haven't read them or whatever. But the first book is like my least favorite. And the second and the third are my favorite, so I'm excited to see how they take those on in the show and how they adapt that. But I don't know, there's something about the book that when you read it, you just can't stop. It's one of those books where you can't put it down. You can't ask Mom. She was like, oh my god, this is so good. And she even read this author's second series, and she finished that, and she said that was absolutely amazing. And that's actually more like crime, something like that. It has to do with mystery and stuff, so I might read that and see if that's, but yeah, I don't want to give too much away because then I'll just like ramble because I like really love these books, but yeah, I think you guys should give it a shot. I'm getting my friends on it, and
I think you know, I think you've done a good enough job, at least for me, to be partly curious.
I think you should read
it's the battle scene, whether it's the connection. I mean, I don't think you insisted too much on that wolf. I'm more curious about the wolf, what happened.
Well, you have to read.
They get eaten.
Or else I'll spoil it.
Yeah.
I can't spoil it.
Well, a Court of Thorns and Roses, you know, so a lot of R's there. Please check it out. And if you have any comments, you know, put them on our, put on the YouTube channel on the bottom. And
if you want to discuss these books with me, I will more than gladly discuss these books
and let us
with
know.
you.
So thank you, Camila. That was lovely. The book that I've been wanting to talk to you about, and I've given you a glimpse, and I've also sent a few images to some of the swimmers out there, is called The Watermen. The only other podcast I saw was from Swim Swam News, where he got to interview the author, Michael Loynd, about this. Michael Loynd is part of the St. Louis I think Olympic Committee, also part of the IOC, so the International Olympic Committee. So he has a background in trying to understand everything tied to, you know, the Olympics, to sports. So what's beautiful about this story, Camila, is that it's an underdog story. It's a person who, against all odds at his time, and overcomes many challenges, personal, and then also larger in the scale of where we were at, and I'll talk about it. So to me, this is, and by the way, the author, every time he watches like the sport shows like Rudy and stuff like that, his wife makes fun of him because he gets into tears. He loves like those, you know, those things, and so do I. So I think that's why this book appealed to me a lot, as it rains outside a lot right now. But most importantly, as a swimmer too, it was all the details behind it were fascinating to me, right? So there's especially a really poignant moment for me. It is at the end, but where it concludes is at the 1908 London Olympics. Now, if you know your history, you've studied the Gilded Age, the Victorian Age, we're talking turn of the century, 1800s to 1900s. The US is slowly becoming the power that it will become and dominate by the mid-century, okay? But who was number one? The British Empire. Not only England, but also Australia and its colonies. And at the time, through sport, which has not changed, which is fascinating, the British and their imperialism were asserting themselves on every single level. And you know where they dominated? Swimming. And so for over 60 years, if not 70, the Brits were the number one watermen, the number one aquatic. And why did they call them watermen? Because there weren't any real pools. People had constructed like bathhouses and other kind of aquatic elements, but there was no lane lines, there was no black lines at the bottom, and as the hero, who we'll talk about, comes up and learns to swim, he's learning in lakes. And then when he's able to go to a pool in New York, not only at the Knickerbocker Club or at the New York Athletic Club, NYAC, it was just a basin with no filtration system, and if they didn't take out the water, it turned brown. Gross. Can you imagine that? Yeah. So under these conditions, you have this gentleman named Charles Daniel, who was the most decorated Olympian with another gentleman from Hungary, but swimmer until Mark Spitz in the 1970s. Nobody talked about this. From 1908 all the way through 1972, when Mark Spitz was at the Olympics and he won his 7 medals that Phelps broke in 2008, this guy was the most decorated swimmer, and if not athlete. He was, Charles Daniels, that is, came from high society. Buffalo High Society. Do you remember we did our episode about the Adler Hotel was the first one to have interior plumbing in 1908?
Yeah.
So he's coming from this Buffalo family where there were actually a lot of millionaires, not as much as New York, but there was this whole, contingent of rich people there. His father was kind of like a Bernie Madoff type guy, and if you know the news, he kind of, on the name and reputation of his family, he kind of built businesses, but he swindled people out of money. And he did it like 3 times and never got arrested. And so at the time, women and the children were completely under the rule of the patriarch. And so during Charles Daniels' education and as well as his rise in the swimming world, you could only join clubs if you were like elite families. I mean, you're talking about clubs where people are smoking cigars, dressed up in suits. The pool is all the way in the basement, past the bowling alleys, swimming was not popular at all in the US. And it's shocking maybe for you to hear and for a lot of people to hear this, because the US is such a dominant force in swimming and always has been, at least since I was born, but it wasn't always the case. And so in this story, you find out that against societal odds, against a dad that was a swindler and was in the papers and completely created a reputation for the mom and the dad that made him very anxious and nervous, he was also fighting crippling anxiety, either before his races. He also was in an era where freestyle was being formed, the crawl stroke. So a lot of people think, oh, well, freestyle always existed. No, they used to have the trudgeon stroke. And it was almost like swimming breaststroke, but like with your arms kind of floating. And so here we are with not a real swimming pool, people learning outside, people even competing in the sea. In Athens, the first Olympics in 1896, well, the return to Athens, they swam in the sea, and there were 6-foot waves. And one of the swimmers, I think either Hungarian swimmer and champion, said yes. He said, my desire to live was higher than my desire to win. And so it is also an era where it's kind of brutal. People are not very sportsmanlike, and especially the British Empire. Apparently, side note, in water polo, you were allowed to choke in order to hold on to, you were allowed to choke, you were allowed to put people in positions. People were so aggressive and not letting go of the ball, they found 2 water polo swimmers in the bottom of the pool unconscious because neither one wanted to let go of the ball. They've had to suspend games where 4 people were completely injured and had to be brought to the hospital because of how violent water polo was. I mean, it is fascinating to show at the turn of the century where the heads were at. On top of that, you're used to dad in a swimsuit, Speedo, or people in jammers if you've been to a pool. Right. You're talking about a wool complete outfit, very heavy. Yeah. There was so much going against this boy, Charles Daniels, right? He participated in the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis. So the U.S. was able to kind of fight the dominance of Pierre de Coubertin, who apparently was the guy who brought back the Olympics, but he was a 5'3" kind of angry Frenchman with a large mustache. We'll forgive him. But there was a guy named Jim Sullivan who was part of the American Athletic Association Union, amateur American Athletic Association, and he brought it to St. Louis. But it's funny, they weren't really the Olympics. He brought around the St. Louis Fair, which was a way for your city and country to show how your dominance was, how in this industrial revolution you were inventing stuff. Athletics was a side gig to that. So millions of people visited St. Louis for the fair, but then on the side be like, well, let's go see some guys swim in a lake where cows have been pooping and there's algae everywhere. That's where he swam in the 1904 Olympics, and that's the picture that you see right here. And guess what? They had to invent a wooden pontoon for them to take your marks. So Charles, to finish off, Charles Daniels, who at the time was pretty much holding the records from the 50 yards to the mile in every single race, overcame his anxiety, overcame the society pressures, but most importantly, traveled to England to show the English what he was made of. Because every record that he did in the US, the Brits were like, nah, not good enough, mate. Oh, no, he had a head start. Oh, he had a handicap. Oh, the judges, we don't trust them. The Brits were such assholes during this time that they wanted it to inflict their dominance. It led up to these 1908 Olympics. And without giving everything away, just to tell you, he did win gold. He had won gold before, but he won gold in front of 15,000 people with a world record in the 100 meter. He was also good at turns, by the way. But guess what the Brits did? In the stadium, they built a 100-meter basin. No turns, no lanes, straight shot. They even didn't want him to win. And so not only they conspired for him not to win, guess what they did at the finals? As he led up to the heats and the semifinals and the finals, the starter used to say, swimmers, take your marks. But then he'd pause and he'd go, is everybody ready? Are you ready? And then when people would nod, boom, the gun went off, or they'd say go, because the Brits didn't use the gun, they wanted to say go. It turns out in the final, they told every single swimmer in the final what they were going to do. He was still in his robe. They go, swimmers, take your marks, go. He had to rip off his robe. He dove in about a second to a second and a half late, and he still went 65.6, 105.6, 100 meters in 1908. So,
it's pretty good.
This guy, so by the way, also, when he swam in 1908, he almost didn't breathe for like 50 meters in order to catch up. And his lungs were hurting, and Michael Loyne, I want to really point out that he writes with suspense. Like you're almost like you're paying attention to the race, and as a swimmer, you feel anxious. He put in so much detail from either the accounts that people who were there, letters that other people had written, that also Charles had written, and he had to reconstruct this investigation to come up with this book. And the beauty of it, and the author will tell you this, it was an accident how he fell on this information. Pure accident. He was researching something else about the Olympic movement, and suddenly he fell on this story of this Charles Daniel who overcame an absent father, a father who swindled people and gave the mother and him such bad reputation that nobody would touch them in society, overcame the British Empire to become the most decorated swimmer for years, decades. And he watched Mark Spitz at the age of 87 become the most decorated swimmer. So if I haven't convinced you to read this book is not just about swimming. It's about triumph of the spirit, triumph of overcoming obstacles, and not letting the times, not letting other people define you. And by the way, Charles got a lot of help along the way by at least 4 or 5 different people, but he got help by a gentleman named Otto Wall, who was an Austrian Jewish immigrant who came in the 1901 to the U.S. to escape the persecution he was already receiving, and he wanted to show that that Jews were also good athletes. And this is the guy who helped him form what is now known as freestyle or the American crawl. But he also got inspired by Australians along the way. He got inspired by other folks at the NIAC, and he always had these these figures gravitating around him that believed in him. And he was only 6 feet, 150 pounds. I've sent out the pictures and we'll put them up. Super nice guy, super humble, and apparently this guy's so funny. There was some when he moved to California towards the end of his years, there was a massive flood and they were evacuating people, and he goes, listen guys, at my age, I'm like, if the river takes me, I'm like, let the water take me. That type of guy. So that's it.
Sounds nice.
No, he really moves me because it's not easy. It's not easy.
Sound like it.
It wasn't easy at the time, and there's a lot more details behind his lead up to the 1908 race where everything was against him, cold temperatures, the British Empire, no
And
turns.
British just hate everybody.
The fastest 100-meter race at the time, world record. So check it out, The Watermen, and Michael Loyne, your book is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But any questions you want to ask me from what you heard, or what do you think?
No.
What's your reaction?
I mean, I don't read biographies, like things written like that, but it sounds interesting in a sense where it's like very moving, and it's, as a swimmer, it's interesting to read about the history of swimming because I've never really researched that.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Neither did I.
Care, but I guess it's nice to like read about that and kind of relate with the whole anxiety thing and like see how things were adapted and changed to be where they are now. But yeah, I didn't know any of that before.
I don't think a lot of people,
Yeah.
I think everybody who's discovering this book as either as a swimmer, as an athlete, or anybody interested in just an underdog story are going to find a lot of themes that are relevant
I think
nowadays.
it's very moving.
Super, and
Just listening to it, it's just
yeah,
like, dang.
a bit sad how his life ended, but he didn't want attention. He never wanted attention. He was more interested in the journey, which I think is beautiful. I think somebody, one of my work colleagues, her Instagram's called Journey is the Destination, right? And I think, by the way, he was in Aries, March 24th.
Oh, okay. So no wonder he didn't stop.
He didn't stop, and when people told him either you're not good enough, or when his father told him he wasn't good enough, or others, he kept on going.
Right. Yeah, sounds like an Aries.
He's a wonderful spirit.
Yeah.
So I'll conclude today maybe on some lighter notes, because that was maybe a little heavy for
It's a
some.
little depressing.
No. Depressing.
It was nice.
It was no.
It's just like kind of sad because it's like, dang, poor guy. I just feel bad for him.
Well, some people don't want the spotlight. Some people just want to be, and some people want to do extraordinary things, and they don't need a pat on the back to do it. And to me, that's
Man, good for you, because not me. I could
No,
never. I
you-
could never.
you don't. Sometimes you don't. The only person you're accountable to is yourself, right?
Right.
And you look in the mirror. So I'm sure when he looked in the mirror and he saw the flood, he's like, you know what?
I would just take him.
I'm like, if it takes my house, it takes me. I'm good.
Just like,
I'm
yeah.
like, I've done enough.
Right.
And by the way, he apparently through the letters that they read, through the visits, you know, with his 2 grandkids, used to call him all the time. He'd always tell me he loved them. But he'd have his own world,
Normal
chopping wood. He did woodcraft at one point.
Okay.
He used to show up at bars and just play poker just to get a little bit of money. So he went from high society to the most simple life and didn't ask anything about it. But,
Right.
you know, you'll have to read to
Good for him.
hear it. So just to conclude today, I wanted to talk about odd animal news. As you know, odd news for us is a segment we love.
Yes, we do.
So there's been,
Oh God.
yeah, no, this we're gonna go around the globe.
I haven't heard this, so let's
No,
see.
you have not heard this. So the first odd news, and it's animal odd news, is coming from Turkey.
Oh goodness.
Believe it or not, your mom is obsessed right now with Turkish
Yeah, I was
soap
gonna say
operas.
fitting.
But apparently, recently, I think 2 days ago, there was a bear cub, a small bear. The picture was hilarious. He was in the back of a truck, and he looked high as a kite. And they said that bear cub gets high on mad honey, which in Turkish is deli bal. And he was rescued by park rangers because apparently he had some rhododendron honey that gives you a hallucinogenic effect. So this poor bear cub fed on this honey that made him high, and he was just chilling. He couldn't walk properly, so they had to put him in the back of the truck. He was like this, I swear to God. He was like, and
poor baby though.
so they brought him to the vet, and they allowed him to get his head clear, just like as if he had coffee. But he's all right. He's all right. He was put back in nature, and they just told him lay off the deli ball, the mad honey,
Right.
and try to avoid it. So I think hopefully he's learned his lesson.
really
But he
hope
was very
so.
cute. He's alive.
Aw.
Okay. The second odd news, we're going to Japan. Surprise!
Okay.
Um,
Back.
so on the 27th of July, beachgoers in Japan were warned about a biting dolphin. I'm not inventing this
Oh,
again.
Jesus.
We keep on warning you. The animals, you think they're cute. So in the Fukui region, there's a displeased dolphin who is going after men over 40. For some reason, there was no stories of women, children. He's going after men over 40. And apparently the attacks have been linked to one single dolphin.
Okay.
By the way, he was spotted at other beaches, so watch out.
Oh God.
There was overall 10 incidents, and the people please do not touch the tip of his nose or the back of his fin because he was getting aggressive, but this particular dolphin. So your mother and I swam with dolphins in Mexico. If that was the dolphin there, we'd be screwed. I would have come out injured. The manatee would have had to, with the lettuce, put on my wounds or do something.
Yeah.
Apparently, this dolphin in Japan is really irate. Be careful, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
Okay, we'll stay in Japan
Oh, of course.
for the third odd animal. This one's a gang of monkeys
Oh God.
has been attacking and wounding over 50 people in Western Japan. Mild scratches and bites apparently is the extent. So we've got a yakuza, which is the mafia of Japan.
Oh.
So we've got a gang of monkeys, the yakuza monkeys, but they found the gang leader
Oh Jesus.
and they killed him.
What?
Yes. So he was roaming the grounds of a high school, and
No way.
and they just killed him.
Oh my God.
So I don't. But apparently, his legend lives on because the gang has continued to attack.
Yeah.
And so
As they should.
people have been arming themselves. This is the best, with umbrellas
What?
and tree cutting scissors to defend themselves. I found that very odd weapons.
Well,
Umbrellas.
it's monkeys in the trees. They need the umbrella so if the monkey falls on them.
No, but what about tree cutting scissors?
They're
Why?
probably just it's I think it's a considerable length from the monkey. I don't know.
So be careful there. And then, as we know, with online, people are obsessed with cat videos,
Yep.
right? This one was called Digital Perfection.
Oh jeez.
Terrible.
Okay.
So apparently, I think it's either a French company or a European company has invented a game where there's a cat that is the hero.
Okay.
And so cats, real cats, have become mesmerized by the video cat. It's not over. The human beings that own the cats have been filming their cat be mesmerized by the digital cat. So it's odd news to me because
What?
get a bloody life. And Seriously?
I'm gonna look that up when we finish
Look it up.
recording.
Digital perfection. I didn't invent
Oh,
it.
that's funny.
Okay, I'm gonna stop on that note because that's depressing
Right.
or
That's
funny.
sad.
Thank you, Camila. Where can people find us?
Yeah, you guys can find us on Instagram at Submerged Podcasts, on Spotify, and on YouTube as well at Submerged Podcast TV. And you can turn on your post notifications and get notifications when we post. And go check us out on Instagram. Interact with our page. We'll be more than glad to talk to you through comments and messages and whatnot.
Thank you very much. We look forward to your comments
Yes.
and see you on next episode.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.